What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lunch Table Sports Podcast. Draft week, we're going to keep pumping out videos, but this is kind of a fun one for us. I'm more of the Pistons fan. Adyn obviously has a little love for them, hometown team, but we're here with the Pistons offseason plan. We're going to be going through kind of what we think they should do in the draft, kind of who we think some of their top free agency targets are, and more.
Yeah, obviously, just like you said, I'm not as big of a Pistons fan as you, but I like where the team's headed, and they got a lot of good young players right now, and I think the future is bright for Detroit, for all the sports, but for the Pistons too.
Yeah, for sure. Just before going on this, I am a diehard Pistons fan, so don't get me wrong there. But first step in this is the draft. Draft is this Thursday. I'm gonna be going over some of the prospects Pistons could target in that draft. And I think the top prospect on the Pistons draft board has to be Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey is a perfect fit in the backcourt with Cade Cunningham. And recent reports came out that the Kings really like Keegan Murray. So I'm very optimistic that Jaden Ivey has the chance to fall to pick 5 to the Pistons, which if you saw our last video, the NBA big board, you would know he's a top 3 player in the draft for me. So just matching him in the backcourt with Cade, I mean, it would be amazing for Pistons fans.
Yeah, we talked about Jaden Ivey a little bit in the last video. I think you talked about him great. He's definitely a good player, and Pistons, I think if he falls to them, that's a great value pick.
Yeah, next prospect on my big board for the Pistons is Keegan Murray. I actually really like Keegan Murray a lot. I think people try to label him. I said this in the last video, but people kind of label him as this older, kind of not as really flashy guy. But I think, that's not really the case. He averaged 24 points in college, and arguably the best basketball conference in the country. So I think that alone says a lot about his game. He's an amazing scorer. He can score at all levels on the court. There's no limitations there. He's not your plus athlete, but I don't really think that's a big kind of shocker. I don't think that's a big kind of deal breaker for some of these teams. And if you're the Pistons, I think it would fit right in with their team, their culture. It would slide right in that power forward spot with the team, most likely moving on from Jeremy Grant. So if Jaden Ivey does go in the top 4, I would not be mad at all if Keegan Murray winds up in Detroit.
Yeah, so like I said before, we went over these guys. Make sure to check out that video. But any of these players, any of these lottery guys, I think this is a pretty deep draft. I don't think there's a big fall off from the top guys to kind of the middle of the pack guys. So I think there's a lot of guys the Pistons could take here. But I like Keegan Murray a lot. Just like you said, he's a polished player. He averaged over 20 points in college, which is really good. And he comes from an Iowa team that knows how to win. And I think he can bring that to the Pistons. So I like Keegan Murray for the Pistons a lot.
Yeah, my next prospect here I got is Benedict Matheson from Arizona. I really like the potential fit with Matheson. This is a more prospect, I think, if the Pistons do trade Jeremy Grant for that 7th pick with the Trailblazers, which has kind of been a heavy rumor so far this offseason. We'll get to that a little bit in a second here. But Matheson, I think, if they do get the 7th pick, would be an excellent selection. He's an amazing offensive player. He really fits with the Pistons culture. I think if you draft him, you'd have an amazing 3-guard rotation with Cade, Ben, and Killian. And I just think he would be a perfect fit for the Pistons. He's not your elite defender, but I don't think he has to be in Detroit. You got a lot of good defenders there, and Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart. So I just think if he works on that game a little bit, it'd be amazing fit for the Pistons.
Yeah, I like Ben Matheson a lot. I think he's underrated in this draft. He's been on a good developmental track these past couple of years, improving every year he's played. He was an all Pac-12 star. He's a multi-faced offensive guy. He's creative. He can play the 1 or the 2 guard. So I think a versatile guy like that would fit very well with the Pistons young players.
Yeah, and then one more target on my draft board here is a little bit of a wild card. I don't really know where to rank him amongst those kind of guys the Pistons are eyeing. That's Shaedon Sharpe. The big mystery of the draft, I haven't really heard a lot of teams really talking about Shaedon Sharpe. I know he's worked out for a lot of teams, Pistons included. And I feel like, we're not really discussing him going at that 5 spot, which I don't really think is likely. But hey, maybe Jeremy Grant gets traded for that 7th pick, and boom, the Pistons might take a shot on Shaedon Sharpe. I think he's too big of a mystery though to kind of go in that 5 spot for me. But I mean, he's got all the athletics you would want, all the offensive scoring you would want. So I think this would be more of your developmental type player, but the payoff could be huge.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think if the Pistons do trade down to 7, I think Shane Sharp could be a guy that they target. Just like you said, I think there's some guys that I would take ahead of him at 5, but yeah, we'll see what happens on draft night. But I like Shane Sharp a lot.
Yeah. Moving on to my part 2 of this offseason plan, I got Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant's been excellent for the Pistons, been a great free agency signing by Troy Weaver. Really flew under the radar in that free agency. They got him an amazing contract. I think it's time now, though, to trade him. You know, teams are moving in a different direction. They're a little younger. Grant's getting up there in age, entering his final year. I don't know if the Pistons bring him back. Let's try to maximize that trade value while he's still got that deal. And my first trade, I know we've been talking about it, is with the Portland Trailblazers. I got Jeremy Grant going to the Trailblazers for Eric Bledsoe and the number 7 pick. I really like this trade for the Pistons because it gives you another top 10 pick in this draft. This might not be the most loaded draft up front, but it's got a lot of good players in this draft. So I think if you get that fit 5 and 7 pick, you be getting excellent players at both picks. Maybe not your superstar like your Kate Cunningham's of that pick, but you're going to get really good basketball players. Eric Bledsoe is just kind of a throw in. It'll probably be a release, a cut, a buyout. But overall, I really like this trade if it were to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think Jeremy Grant, he's been great for the Pistons in that kind of in between stage where they've been rebuilding, and he's been the kind of that star player for them, that guy who takes the load of the scoring. But I think if you can trade him for a trade like pick 7, where you can get another young guy to add to this young core, I think you got to do it. You got to pull the trigger on that and just keep adding to this stash of young players that the Pistons have.
Yeah, no doubt. My next trade here is with the Atlanta Hawks, and this one might be a little bit of a reach, but I have heard reports on Twitter from Woj, Shams, and The Athletic that the Hawks are one of the top suitors for Jeremy Grant. And I also saw another report that they are actively shopping John Collins. And with putting those two together, I kind of say, what would it take for the Pistons to trade for a guy like John Collins? I think he would fit the Pistons team really well. He's very young. He's around 22 or 23, 24. I'm not exactly sure, but he's been a 20-point per game scorer in the past. I saw a little bit of a drop off this past year, but that's really nothing to worry about. I think it would be amazing if you're swapping Jeremy Grant for the Hawks. Hawks might need some of that more veteran scoring, veteran presence on the team, and that really young team. And then I think Frank Jackson, a guy who's going to hit some 3-point shots and a 2nd-round pick. You might want a little more if you're the Hawks, but I think it's kind of the minimum that the Pistons would have to give up in a John Collins trade. And I would absolutely pull the trigger if this was on the table.
Yeah, I think if you get a chance to get a guy like John Collins in Detroit, you got to do it. I think just like you said, you might have to throw in a few other things, like maybe one of these young guys they have. I could see maybe I don't know what you think about this, but maybe a Killian Hayes and kind of take out that Frank Jackson, something like that. I don't know. I'm not saying like that's going to be a trade, but I think maybe another young guy might have to get thrown in there. But yeah, but even that, so I think you got to pull the trigger on a guy like John Collins on that amazing contract, and he's an amazing player too. So.
Yep. And my last kind of trade here for Jeremy Grant is a Phoenix Suns DeAndre Ayton trade. This has been highly speculated ever since these playoffs. DeAndre Ayton, I feel like his whole time in Phoenix kind of been wishy-washy. And with the news that him and the Suns are kind of looking to part ways this offseason, I think the Pistons have to jump all over this. Yeah, you're going to give up Isaiah Stewart, which sucks. I love Beef Stew. He's an active player, shot blocker. But if it's to get a guy like DeAndre Ayton, I think you have to do this. He's a really young, good center. He's got all the talent in the world. Obviously, number 1 overall pick. I think it would fit in right with this Pistons culture. Like I said, it would suck to give up Stewart, but if you're getting a guy like Ayton, I think you have to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. If I'm a Pistons fan, I kind of have mixed emotions about this.
Yeah.
Like a guy like Stewart, I don't know. You could say he has. I mean, DeAndre Ayton. I feel like we've seen a lot of what DeAndre Ayton is, and I think a guy like Stewart, he's got a lot of potential. And I don't know, if I'm the Pistons, I'm not rushing this rebuild. I think they got a lot of young guys; they're all going to develop, and bringing in a guy like Ayton, I feel like it's rushing it a little bit. But that being said, Ayton's a great player, and I think right now he's obviously better than Isaiah Stewart. That'd be a crazy crazy trade for sure if that happens.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one, Adyn. And it would really suck. I actually have mixed emotions about this one too, because Stu is one of my favorite players in the team. I do agree that they shouldn't rush this rebuild. DeAndre Ayton is a restricted free agent. So I think you go after him as a restricted free agent, see if the Suns will match a deal. But I think in the end, it will be a sign and trade. So that's why I had this in the trade category. But my last part here is what do the Pistons do in free agency? I have some targets: target A, target B. This is in no particular order. So if a guy you think is better is ahead of someone else, it's not meaning they're a better player. It's just kind of the order I want to talk about them in. But first target here is Mitchell Robinson. He's going to be a free agent, unrestricted or restricted. I'm not totally sure on that. But the Pistons have been linked to him ever since I want to say mid-February. Popped up in some trade rumors, and Mitchell Robinson I think is a perfect center you would get to Kate Cunningham. He's a 7-footer. He's blocking shots. He's a lob threat. Perfect guy you'd match with Cade. And I think if you're not going to go the DeAndre Ayton route or pay big money to him, I think if you could get Mitchell Robinson for around 12, 13 mil, I think that's perfect. Perfect for the Pistons, perfect for what they do. So I think Mitchell Robinson's kind of a top target I think the Pistons should go after.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful though if you're the Pistons. I don't think you should go out spending big money on guys that are not kind of star players that are gonna really make it. Not saying Mitchell Robinson won't make an impact, obviously he will, but I think just like you said, 12, 13 million, if they can get him on that type of deal, that's a steal in my opinion. And that'd be perfect for them. But just that's my 2 cents on that. Just if I'm the Pistons, I'm careful on spending big money on in this free agency.
Yeah, next kind of target here, I got Miles Bridges. I just think, you just mentioned spending that big money, but I think if you can get these guys on affordable deals, then you would definitely do it. Bridges probably around that 20 mil range, which might seem like a lot, but that's kind of what they gave Jeremy Grant in that free agency. And Miles Bridges has actually put up more than Jeremy Grant has prior to the Pistons signing him as in only 2 years or 3 years. And he's coming off a 19 and a half point season and only 23 years old. So I think if you're going to spend around 20 mil, I think Bridges is the guy to do it because he does fit in with the rebuild. He's young. So he's the best is yet to come from him. And he's already at a potential all-star season. So I think if you're adding him in that mix of young guys, I think it'll be hard to get him. But I think if you can get him, I think it'll be a good signing if they can.
Yeah, obviously if they can get him, that's a great signing for them. But yeah, I think 20 million is a great deal for Miles Bridges if the Pistons can get him on that. It's not a max contract or anything crazy like that, but he could have won Most Improved Player this year. I think he's gonna keep getting better and better as the years go on. And I think the Pistons are in need of kind of a wing player like Miles Bridges, Jalen Brunson type player. That's a young guy that can come in and fit the rebuild and be on the same track as these young guys. So I think a wing like Miles Bridges would be perfect for the Pistons.
Yeah. Also, I want to throw in that he's got that Flint, Michigan connection. Grew up a Pistons fan, so that might be a little more in negotiation talks. But Adyn just mentioned my next target here, Jalen Brunson. I think Brunson. I'm not the biggest Brunson to Detroit fan. I just think he doesn't really what they fit. He's too. I don't know. I have mixed emotions if they were to sign him. They've been heavily linked to him ever kind of since the trade deadline. They actually did throw an offer at him, and the Mavericks kind of said, there's no way we're going to trade him. We want Kate Cunningham in return, and the Pistons just kind of laughed it off. But Brunson would be your 2 guard if you're unable to get anybody in the draft. It'd be a weird fit with Cade because I feel like they're both – Cade can play off ball, but I think last year he played the best on ball, and that's kind of what Brunson kind of plays too. He's that distributor, which fit really well next to Luka. So I think the Mavericks should do their best ability to bring him back. But I think if he does come to Detroit, he would be that ball handler, kind of distributing it around the offense. Plays great defense. I just don't know how much money you would give him. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Adyn?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think you got to be careful bringing in guys like this that are gonna kind of not get in the way of Cade, but kind of limit his touches and on ball playing time. And I think you really got to give him the keys to the offense and make sure that he's your guy. And I think Jalen Brunson's obviously a great player, but I think I'm not sure if he fits that, just like you said, that Pistons needs right now. I think a guy like Miles Bridges is is definitely more of a fit. But that being said, Jalen Brunson's a great player, and I think if the Pistons do sign him, he's only going to help. So, yeah.
Yep. My last kind of free agent target here is Collin Sexton. The Pistons have been thrown in as a name. I saw it on one report. I'm not exactly sure the source. I'll try to pull it up during the editing, but Sexton, coming off the injury, highly rated pick. They picked Darius Garland early the next year after, which kind of hurt Sexton's development a little bit. And then obviously the injury, I think, is kind of, with them doing so good without him, I think he's kind of gone this offseason. And I actually do like the fit of Sexton to the Pistons. He's going to be that scoring two guard next to Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham kind of lay back a little bit and let Sexton do his work, which I think will be a really good fit. The only problem for me is how much money is he going to want coming off an injury? If he's going to want a lot of money, then if I'm the Pistons, I'm not willing to spend that. But if he is willing to go on like a little bit of a prove it deal coming off that injury, I think he would be a really good fit in the Pistons team.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think maybe like a 3 year deal type thing where it's low risk for the Pistons and it's kind of a prove it deal, like you said, for Sexton. He's coming off the injury. He's got a lot to prove. Just like you said, I think his time is kind of done in Cleveland. They got Garland in that spot, and I don't think there's much of a fit for him anymore. But just like you said, I think it would be a great fit next to Cade. He's a good defender. He can kind of make up for that where Cade is kind of lax on defense. And his scoring too. He's a good scorer. He's an underrated scorer. He's a good passer. He can play the one guard and kind of run the offense too. So he's very versatile, and I would like that fit a lot in Detroit.
Yeah, and then one guy I just want to mention who is a free agent is Marvin Bagley. Pistons traded him midway through the year. Thought they kind of fleeced the Kings for him. He's played amazing. He's played the best basketball of his career so far. Really playing like the number 2 pick potential. So I think if you're getting a guy like Bagley and he is hitting free agency, you're going to try on your best ability to bring him back. He's definitely going to want some money. Definitely paying it on how well he played for the Pistons down the stretch last year. They do have him on restricted free agency, so if he's not going to get that offer, he can't come back for around $5 million next year. So I think if you can re-sign a guy like Bagley, that'd be excellent.
Yeah, so I think I got it right here. I think his qualifying offers $7 million around there. So if they get him back on a deal like that, I think that's a steal. But I think it's more likely that he gets kind of like that cap hold type deal, like 25 million ish, which I think isn't bad on a 2-3 year deal. He played very good for the Pistons down the stretch. And so you said he's a young guy. He's got a lot left in the tank, and I think he's going to continue to develop in a better situation than he was in Sacramento. So I think if you're the Pistons, you do everything in your power to bring him back.
Yeah, and then I have here kind of my lineup I put together of what I would absolutely love to happen, and that's if you draft Jaden Ivey at 5, you pull the trigger on that John Collins trade if it's there, and then if you re-sign Marvin Bagley. You could have a lineup looking like Cade, Ivy, Bay, Collins, and Stewart. And then you got that bench. A lot of promising young guys. Killian Hayes played amazing down the stretch. So did Livers, Bagley, Diallo, all those guys. I think this team right here could potentially be a playing team next year, depending on how much progression you see. And then you add the mix of the young guys, add the mix of the vets like Kelly Olynyk off the bench. You got John Collins there at power forward. So that's kind of my lineup and my opinion of what would be my perfect offseason for the Pistons.
Yeah, I can give my kind of final thoughts here. I think this is definitely a perfect offseason for the Pistons.
It's the Pistons' dream for me.
I would love to see it happen. Being in Detroit, I'd love to see it, but we'll see. We'll see about John Collins. I think if they don't end up getting John Collins, I would, if I'm a Pistons fan, I'd be fine having Bagley start at power forward this year. It's not like they're contending or anything like that. They're definitely a few years away from that, but I think Bagley at power forward, if he's starting next year, if they don't get Collins, I'm not mad about that at all. So I think even if they don't get Collins and they do end up getting Ivy, that's a very, very successful offseason for the Pistons, in my opinion.
Yeah, that kind of wraps up the video for us. It's draft week. I don't keep saying that, but super excited for the draft this Thursday. Super stoked to see who the Pistons get. If you like videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you're a fan of another team, just let us know in the comments who you want to see next. We can do that next. We're going to get a lot of draft stuff out of the way here, maybe some free agency, a lot more NHL stuff too. And Adyn, you got anything to say as we wrap it up?
Yeah, just to wrap it up here, excited for the draft. See what the Celtics do, see what the Pistons do. there's a lot of stuff up in the air right now, which is exciting. There's a lot of parity in this draft, so it's cool. And yeah, you just be on the lookout for some draft content, some post kind of draft recap maybe. And yeah, definitely these type of videos are fun doing a kind of dream team off season. So let us know what teams you want next.
All right. See you in the next episode.